Intracellular and extracellular edema. We will be looking into the types of edema, clinical significance, and factors responsible for this. We will also be looking into the role of Starling forces in the development of edema, the role of lymphatic vessels in prevention of edema, and the other safety factors as well. And we will discuss the mechanism of fluid accumulation in potential spaces, and also compare and contrast the intracellular versus extracellular edema. So starting from the intracellular edema is of course the excessive fluid volumes inside the cell, whereas extracellular edema is the excessive fluid volume in the extracellular fluid compartment like the plasma and the interstitial compartment. The intracellular edema is quite rare and occurs in rare cases like in case of hyponatremia. If there is decreased sodium level outside the cell, the hypotonic fluid will enter into the cell to increase the cell size, leading to the cellular expansion and intracellular edema. This can occur in case of depression of the metabolic systems of the tissue. For example, the sodium-potassium pump is otherwise occurring on all the cell levels to export 3 sodium outside and 2 potassium inside. If because of certain reason, for example, some antagonist of the sodium-potassium pump or unavailability of the ATP, the sodium-potassium ATPase functioning decreases, it would be difficult to keep the sodium outside. Rather, it will enter inside the cell and water will also follow this, resulting in the increased cell size in intracellular edema. Lack of adequate nutrition to the cells, which will again result in depressed metabolic machinery and depressed action of the sodium-potassium pump to regulate the level of the sodium. So the intracellular edema is quite rare and also incompatible with the life if not taken care of. While extracellular edema is much more common clinical finding and seen in multiple cases. To understand the concept of what causes this extracellular edema, let us quickly recall the concept of the Starling forces which govern the filtration across the capillaries. So if we recall, the filtration across the capillaries is governed by 2 factors, the balance of these Starling forces and the permeability level of the capillary. As you can see in this image, the 4 Starling forces which are going to result in a net filtration pressure, and this multiplied by the permeability is going to be the total filtration occurring across the capillaries. If we recall these 4 Starling forces, 2 are colloid osmotic pressures and 2 are hydrostatic pressures. One hydrostatic pressure of the capillary, abbreviated as PC over here, other hydrostatic pressure in the interstitium, then colloid osmotic pressure inside the capillary, and the colloid osmotic pressure, or also known as oncotic pressure, inside the interstitium. We can simply decide a basic rule over here that whenever we talk about the hydrostatic pressure, this is because of the fluid volume or pressure, and this is going to push the fluid away from it. Whereas when we talk about the colloid osmotic pressure, this is caused because of the plasma proteins, and this is going to pull the fluid towards itself. This is what you are appreciating in this image as well. This is capillary hydrostatic pressure and it is pushing the fluid away, that is outside the capillary. Whereas interstitial fluid pressure is pushing the fluid away, that is into the capillary. The plasma colloid osmotic pressure is a pulling force and it is pulling the fluid into the capillary, that is favoring the absorption. Whereas interstitial fluid colloid osmotic pressure is pulling the fluid towards it, that is favoring the filtration. So overall, you can see 2 forces which are favoring filtration and 2 forces which are favoring reabsorption. So filtration favored by capillary hydrostatic pressure and interstitial fluid colloid osmotic pressure. But if we practically talk about it, normally the interstitial colloid osmotic pressure should be 0. There should be no proteins in the interstitial fluid. So mostly this is the capillary hydrostatic pressure which is favoring the filtration. And if we talk about the forces which are favoring reabsorption, this is the plasma colloid osmotic pressure which is the major determinant. of the reabsorption across the capillaries. Interstitial fluid pressure, although it pushes the fluid away and favors the reabsorption, is quite dramatic, that in most of the places in the body, this interstitial fluid pressure is in the negative range. Wherever in the body it is in negative range, instead of pushing the fluid away from it, it rather acts as a suction force, and it is pulling the fluid out of the capillaries. So this is quite tricky, and mostly this is negative, and even in the positive range, this is not much a decisive factor to result in major reabsorption. So if we talk about the two most important forces which are favoring reabsorption or filtration across the capillary, the topmost is capillary hydrostatic pressure and the plasma colloid osmotic pressure, which are the major determinants, and majorly the anomalies in these two are going to lead to the edema formation, although the other two forces are also important but lower down in the priority list. So filtration across the capillary is governed by the permeability, as you can see the filtration coefficient over here, and the net filtration pressure, which is decided by the resultant of these four Starling forces. The fluid which comes filtered at the arterial end of the capillary gets reabsorbed at the venous end of the capillary, but these are not exactly same of each other. Some of the fluid is left over here in the interstitium, and this is carried away by the lymphatics back into the circulation. So here comes the role of the lymphatic flow as well. And any of the cases in which the filtration is increased or reabsorption is decreased or lymphatic flow is hampered, the fluid is going to get accumulated over here into the interstitium, leading to the edema formation. So extracellular edema is the accumulation of excess fluid in the extracellular space. As you can see few images over here. Mechanism of edema formation may include either increased filtration or decreased lymphatic flow. The increased filtration can further be attributed either to the increased capillary permeability or the increased net filtration pressure. So if we make this hierarchy, the edema is going to be caused by either decreased lymphatic flow or increased filtration. This increased filtration can be the result of either increased permeability or increased net filtration pressure. This increased net filtration pressure can again be either because of increased plasma hydrostatic pressure or maybe because of decreased plasma colloid osmotic pressure. The other two Starling forces we just discussed are less important to discuss as the cause of edema majorly. So starting from the first one, the increased capillary hydrostatic pressure, it will increase the filtration across the capillaries. Now we are going to further look down into the impact. Number 1, number 2 and number 3. These three we are going to discuss one by one and look into different clinical reasons of which can cause these three impairments. So starting from what can increase the capillary hydrostatic pressure. So as we previously said, the hydrostatic pressure is caused because of the volume or the pressure. So any reason which is going to increase the blood volume is going to increase the hydrostatic pressure, or any disease which is leading to increased blood pressure can also lead to the increased capillary hydrostatic pressure, or any reason which leads to obstruction at the outlet point. If you constrict it over here, the fluid upstream will increase, the pressure will increase, and the capillary hydrostatic pressure will also increase. So starting from all those diseases in which there is increased plasma or blood volume. For example, in case of renal failure, in case of hyperaldosteronism, in case of cardiac failure, there is going to be excessive fluid retention, and the excessive fluid is going to increase the capillary hydrostatic pressure. Increased capillary hydrostatic pressure with increased net filtration pressure, and that is going to lead to edema. In case of higher venous pressure or venous constriction, that is the obstruction or constriction at the outlet end is going to increase the upstream pressure. For example, some venous obstruction, for example, heart failure, the venous return will reduce, the fluid will pile up in the capillaries, leading to the increased capillary hydrostatic pressure. Third, if we dilate this end, that is the arteriolar end, decreased arteriolar resistance. For example, vasodilation, for example, increased body temperature like seen in case of fever, the arteriolar dilatation will lead to increased fluid entering the arterial end of the capillary and thus increased fluid hydrostatic pressure inside the capillaries. So to summarize, any condition increasing the blood volume or pressure, venous constriction or arteriolar dilatation can lead to increased capillary hydrostatic pressure, increased net filtration pressure, and ultimately extracellular edema. Decreased plasma proteins are going to cause decreased capillary hydrostatic pressure. The fluid reabsorption will decrease across the capillary and the fluid will stay more in the interstitium, leading to extracellular fluid edema. Now, what can cause the decreased plasma proteins? Either it can be decreased intake in the food, for example, malnutrition. Either it can be decreased synthesis in the body, for example, liver failure. Either it can be increased loss from the body, for example, in case of nephrotic syndrome. So, any condition which is decreasing plasma protein is going to decrease colloid osmotic pressure and thus lead to extracellular edema. So, loss of proteins or failure to produce or intake proteins. Third condition that can cause edema is increased capillary permeability, which is dependent upon the capillary filtration coefficient. The capillary filtration coefficient is further dependent upon two things. One is the surface area and the other is its capillary permeability value. For example, in case of brains, the brain capillaries are much less leaky because of the tight junctions, while the liver sinusoids are very leaky capillaries. So these two factors are going to decide the capillary filtration coefficient. In case of diseases like immune reactions, toxins, bacterial infections, ischemia, burns, all these are going to lead to an increased capillary filtration coefficient, and is this applied by the net filtration pressure is going to decide the total filtration across the capillaries. If either this or both increase, there is going to be increased filtration and extracellular edema formation. For example, in case of burns, the capillary integrity is reduced, the endothelium is damaged, leading to increased permeability coefficient. So, mechanism of edema formation, one reason is increased capillary filtration, either because of increased hydrostatic pressure, decreased colloid osmotic pressure, or increased capillary permeability. The second cause of edema formation can be decreased absorption by the lymphatic vessels. The fluid is filtering over here and reabsorbed over here. Leftover was to be taken away by the lymphatic vessels, and there is something wrong with the lymphatics. This can also result in extracellular edema formation. So the factors that decrease lymphatic flow can be, for example, blockage or removal of either lymphatic vessels or lymphatic nodes. For example, in case of cancers, infections, like seen in case of filariasis, elephantiasis, the parasitic infection, surgical resection, for example, again in case of tumor. So this was all about the mechanism of edema formation. Now we will look into what can prevent the edema formation. The safety factors of edema. The body has three categories of safety factors that prevent the edema formation, including the low compliance of the interstitium, capability to increase the lymphatic flow, and capability to wash away the excessively filtered proteins from the interstitium. And they are providing respectively, a safety factor of 3, 7 and 7 millimeters of mercury. That comes out in total to be about 17 millimeters of mercury is the safety factor against prevention of the edema. We will look into the details one by one, how they can prevent. Starting from the low compliance of the interstitium. As you see in this image, on the x-axis is the interstitial fluid pressure and on the y-axis is interstitial fluid volume. Mostly the body is functioning at this range, that is negative interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure. We discussed this previously. When the negative interstitial fluid range from here to here, you can see the compliance is very low. Now what compliance is? Compliance is a simple physics phenomena. Change in volume per unit change in pressure, we call it compliance. So if you look into the negative range of this interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure, for a large change in pressure, that is from -2 to -10, there was a difference of -8 millimeters of mercury. But the volume, that was a negligible change, a very low change for a very high change in pressure. So the body is working at low compliance range over here, a very low compliance of interstitium until it stays in the negative hydrostatic pressure range. And this is where the body is working normally. So for a large variation in hydrostatic pressure, there is just a little variation in the volume and edema does not develop even if the hydrostatic pressure reduces from -810 to 864 to 0. The body resists the development of edema. So -7 millimeters, 7 millimeters of mercury is the safety factor, 3 millimeters of mercury, because body is working in this range, -3 millimeters of mercury till 0 millimeters of mercury. There is almost no change in the volume of the interstitium. But after that, in the positive range, as there is even a small change in the pressure, there is going to be a large change in the volume, which will result in the high compliance and not providing the safety factor against the edema formation. Next is increased lymphatic flow. This is the capability of body to wash away the excessive proteins which are lost in the interstitium. And if that is taken away, the fluid, if is being filtered excessively into the interstitium up to a limit, the lymphatics can increase their removal capacity. If they were, let's suppose, carrying away 1 ml per minute, they can carry away up to 50 ml per minute to remove the excessive fluid lost over here and thus prevent the formation of edema. And it provides a 7 millimeters of mercury safety factor against development of edema. Also, the lymphatics are capable of washing away any interstitial fluid proteins which are lost from the capillary to the interstitium. Normally, these should not be filtered, but if filtered, these will lead to increased filtration into the interstitium and edema formation. But here, luckily, the lymphatics are capable of carrying away these proteins. The interstitial fluids pressure will increase, which will increase the lymphatic flow, and proteins will be carried away from the interstitium. And when the proteins in the interstitium will decrease, of course, the net filtration pressure is going to decrease, and this will prevent further accumulation of fluid in the interstitium, thus reducing the chances of edema by another 7 millimeters of mercury. So the negative interstitial hydrostatic pressure range, we have low compliance. We have the capacity to increase lymphatic flow and capability of lymphatics to wash away proteins. These three collectively prevent the formation of edema up to a limit, which is physiologically possible. Later on, because of increased net filtration pressure, increased filtration coefficient, or decreased lymphatic flow, can lead to extracellular fluid edema formation, which is outside the capacity of these safety factors to compensate for. That's all about the concept of edema. Thank you.